those who couldn't be here. And
Say okay.
so
Okay.
so last week we began, or we were continuing rather, the exercise or the lesson on overcoming. And so I'm going to bring that back up here onto the share screen so we can read together.
While you do
And
that, Marty, can I share something with folks?
please.
So, because this is the point I know in the program where you ask what we thought about this week and reflections on our from last week. And so I'm a big fan of Emmett Fox and read his Around the Year with Emmett Fox. And you know, he was at Unity Village quite a bit. He was younger than the Fillmores, but I think he overlapped them. Anyway, he's English and he's kind of proper in the way he speaks. And remember, it's old school, but this is what he said. Your invisible dictaphone. And this goes to the subconscious mind that we were talking about, the conscious mind that we spoke about last week. So your destiny depends entirely upon your own mental conduct. You may think that you know this already, but if you do not act upon it, it is certain that you will not really know it. Most people would be amazed to discover how much negative thinking they indulge in. Thought is so swift and habit is so strong that unless you are very careful, you will constantly transgress. Suppose that quite without your knowledge, an invisible dictaphone was strapped on your shoulders the first thing tomorrow morning, and that you carried it about all day until the last thing you did tomorrow night. Then suppose that this record were played back to you. Every word you had uttered for a whole day was repeated to you. Well, if you're an average human being, you would probably be embarrassed. Yet it really does happen that everything we say and think and do is recorded in the subconscious mind.
It's joy to meeting.
And our daily experience is simply that record being played over to us by the law of being. Never forget the circumstances of your life tomorrow are molded by your mental conduct of today.
Oh, good.
So I thought, even though dictaphones have gone out with the
Yeah.
many technology generations ago, um, the words are still true about the subconscious mind and its power.
Yeah, the dictaphone went out with carbon paper. So thanks for
Here
that.
you go, Claudia. I got my copy for you.
Oh, of the of
Yeah, yeah. I keep it right next to me.
I love it. It's a good he, there's some days that are better than others, but I do keep track of what Emmett's saying to me.
Leo.
I want to share. I had a challenging day today because I was intensively working with the mentally challenged Victor, aneurysm Janet. So I really went into a valley because the subconscious was, how you say that, playing up and put a lot of obstacles in our way, to the point that even my wife became hostile towards me. So I had to become really quiet. And I managed it, but it was hours and hours of challenging things. And then all of a sudden, my wife picked up the thread again. And it was as if all vanished. Yeah, it's not true, but it was an overcoming. And if we would have time, I would like to mention one mythical person that plays a major role in the Netherlands. And we call him Sinterklaas. And the Americans know a version of it that is called Santa Claus. but it is specifically something else because the Sinterklaas is sitting on a white horse, and the meaning of that he has overcome his five senses, and he is surrounded by black peach, and these represent the invisible forces over which Santa Claus has his dominion. Now, the people in the Netherlands are now voting to get that festivity away or make people paint the faces of the beast no longer black. They can be rainbow colors, but not black because black people feel offended. But the fact is, it represents a really inner truth, and that is exactly this chapter, overcoming. We need to overcome challenges that are, well, accepted in our own house, our own church, our own body. And when they become helpers, then they become black peach. And the very presence of us, we are surrounded by these helpers that originate from our own being. And I use that metaphor with Victor, and I hope to, I don't know how you say, further expand that. And it's a great lesson for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
Yes.
Anybody else? Before we, because I think Leo just set us up to read today's reading. Okay, so who would be willing to read? Let's just start with number 11. Leo, go ahead.
Overcoming. What is overcoming? When rightly understood, all overcoming is seen to be an inner realization of victory over error states of consciousness. Sometimes, however, one's conscious thought may give him no hint of the overcoming which he needs to do in his subconscious phase of mind. However, when spirit begins to quicken and transform him, it will reveal the need of a new state of mind.
Wow, thanks.
And that is exactly what happened with me today. I had a very long drive and we were visiting relatives, but unfortunately, my wife had a sleepless night and she told me she was all night busy with Victor because it's a close friend of him for 33 years. And she was really grumpy because she couldn't sleep. And anyway, at a certain moment, I started to quiet down and I selected YouTube and something went wrong. And guess what? The song See Me Beautiful came on my screen. I didn't select that. I didn't do that. But I tapped play. Amazing. And then it took another half hour and my wife turned around and we had a warm conversation again. And it means, in my case, if you look at this text, I didn't know what was happening to us. I knew I needed that new state of mind because I was already trapped in the couldn't solve it. And then this song popped up. Boom. Great.
Yeah, I like that. I like that line there. It says, sometimes our conscious thought may give us no hint of the overcoming which we need. What else do we read in this? Anybody?
I'd like to comment on Leo's comment, his
Go ahead.
sharing. And it's the point that he said the music came on and the song See Me Beautiful came on. So going back to what we were talking about last week about how music, will shift your consciousness and at various levels, and how it engages so many aspects of the brain, parts of the brain. So you heard the words, but you had the feeling, you had the music itself. So yeah, I guess what we all should do when we get grumpy is play music, uplifting music.
Thank you.
Or even
for that.
grumpy music.
I don't think grumpy music's gonna do it.
I
It's
don't
gonna
know.
be something.
Yeah, grumpy is necessary because you need to get to know yourself, and you get to know that you somehow got in that state of grumpiness, and you need to find out how to get the way out without effort.
Yes, I think grumpy is good. Well, grumpy being aware, but I was thinking grumpy music wasn't going to do it for you, but maybe it does. Maybe it does, Marty. I don't know.
Well, as always in these things, because we're dealing with practice, there's only one way to find out, and that's to go do it. See what happens.
Don't make me plant an earworm.
Anybody else on paragraph 11? Anything occurred to you? Yeah, Janet.
Okay, so I was very engaged with this last week, and really, I think a lot about the subconscious. And then I read this, I don't know if we read number 11 last week, but I read it maybe after the meeting closed. And then I had some big dreams that night. And then next day, Monday, I realized that I have been taking direction from my subconscious since I got sick in 2017. That's 8 years. And I I took whatever authority the voice of the subconscious comes through in, which I think it has to be somewhat mixed up with what you think you know, I'm not sure. I'm still quite shocked by the whole thing, but I did not want to be sick. I did not want there to be anything wrong with me. And I started pushing back against Western medicine and medicine world. And I was always going to the hospital and the doctors and saying, you just don't get it. I've had these brain injuries. I have these different things wrong with my head. It is causing these physical symptoms. I was just sure. And the alternative was to admit that there was something wrong with my heart valve and that the valve needed to be replaced. And I did not want to be in the hospital. I did not want to have surgery. And I kept advocating why that was not true, that it wasn't my heart, it was my brain. And I really believe that since I joined in with you people at the beginning of the year and reading so much of the material and wanting to be authentic, I think that I was being prepared for this sort of realization that I'm due for the annual echocardiogram on September 8th. And I'm already prepared to say, of course, I need a valve replacement. I argue with that poor cardiologist every year and say, this is coming from my brain. It is not coming from my heart. And my symptoms this year continued to get worse. And I could not put that towards anything to do with my heart. I was being very much directed that this was my brain. And it's very easy if you're a prayerful person to think God's given you the messages. But I realized that the subconscious is very powerful and will line right up with all the misinformation that it carries. And I've got to be really careful going forward to share it with people or talk about it and really discern that this is not God. It is not, my mystical knowing. It is something coming from a bad set of facts. Because last week I remember you saying this is nothing. The subconscious has just got information, plays back to you information. And my information is very distorted from the years that I had polio. So it has colored every medical thing I've ever been through. And I'm very much in awe of how, when it's time for it to be healed, it gets healed and you get a whole different perspective. So I read the annotations and I've been, really thankful, kind of shocked, but thankful. And I am anyone that I've mentioned this to saying, you need to realize this is going to be the year that I'm going to have to agree to have the replacement. And everyone says, no, no. And I'm saying, I think so. So here we go. And I just thank you all so much for all your wisdom and how much you share, because it really helps me. As we can see, if I'm going to take care of this and I am actually going to start to feel better, how silly am I going to feel for having wasted 8 years of my life claiming that it was one thing? Because I knew. And it was really evil devil subconscious giving me bad information. Done.
Wow.
Thanks. Leo?
The Thai would say to you, Janet, yai yen yen. And roughly translated, it means have a cool heart. But the real Buddhist meaning is that you join mind and heart together. So all people on the path of growth study something. Some of them becomes doctors. Some of them specialize in heart. Some of them specialize in brain. Not many of them specialize in a cool heart. That means the integration of mind and heart. So I believe that you didn't spend these 8 years in vain. You don't need to be angry. That was your path. Because, and now I'm talking in the same sense as I talked to Victor, you have black peats in you that are being instructed one way and other black peats that are instructed the other way. And your own consciousness needs to find the balance in that. For that, you find externally sources. Don't blame the messenger, but find what they are trying to point to. And if someone says, there is something I see in the heart, that should not, how you say that, worry you. It just means there is an aspect of heart in me that I need to address. And I think somewhere 1 or 2 months ago, I had this, they given me an idea. Don't blame other people for not being perfect. So if a surgeon says, I am perfect, he means to say, in my specific area, I'm quite good. I keep it, I love it like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
Welcome.
Thanks, Leo. Anybody else on paragraph 11? If not, who will read 12? Let's read 12 and 13. Who would be willing to read 12 and 13?
I'll take a stab at it, Marty.
All right, Veldon, thank you.
Starting with 12. You just moved it and I can't see it now.
Sheldon, read it off of this.
I don't want to read it off of that.
It's much bigger.
There was a paragraph just above that said, what is it that man is to overcome? I think is what it said.
That's
Right. So
One may find himself in the midst of One may find himself in the midst of inharmonious experiences in body or in affairs. When these experiences come, a person may find that he is a great sinner and begin to condemn himself. But condemnation must be overcome because it makes heavier the burden of sin. Now I'll try 13. The seeming injustice of including all the race in Adam's sin is changed, cleaned away when the laws of the mind and the power of thought are understood. All men are created equal. The Declaration of the Independence. The same law that makes man sinners makes a man righteous in Christ. The use of the law determines the result in men's life. For us thought, the man, I'm having trouble seeing that far enough. Marty, you want to
as through, as through.
For as through the one man's disobedience, the many were made sinners. Even so, through the obedience of the one shall the many be made righteous. Sin, that is error or negative thinking, is overcome by the attaining of a consciousness of truth. The whole message of the gospel is that as the race went down into sin and death in the Adam consciousness of sin, so shall it be lifted in righteousness and life in the Christ consciousness. A cause set into operation always produces a like effect.
Thanks, team. Thanks, Fresno team.
we two-step it when necessary.
Yeah, you done good. So, thoughts? What do we read in these two paragraphs?
Well, I read what happened to me today.
Okay.
Well, part of it goes back to the definition of sin, and that is that it's not that awful thing. What it is error consciousness or error thought. Once corrected, it's no longer a sin.
Yeah.
From the Greek.
I never liked the concept of sin, such as what I would say the Catholic Church espouses, but I really believe that yes, it is error thinking, and the way to fix sin is to have corrected or true consciousness about what you're doing, period.
And I always like to remind myself that sin actually is an archery term that just means falling below the mark. It's Greek.
There you go.
So I always think of that when it's like sin. It's like, yeah, well, fell below the mark, and as he says there, it can be lifted up. If one person thinks correctly, it can be lifted up. If you act then correctly, it erases the sin. It's not mortal and it's not original.
Well, and it helps us hit the mark instead of not hitting the mark.
Falling, I love it, falling below the mark. It's like, ooh, just kind of drifted off the mark just a little bit, falling below it. So, yeah.
Good analogy.
Marty, can I read the annotation? The annotation says a lot.
Yeah, go for it. Thank you.
The aspiration to become, this is for 12 and 13, the aspiration to become Christ conscious, to know the truth of oneself, causes one to become sensitive to spirit. In projecting affirmations of truth into his consciousness, man stirs up the entire subconsciousness, the relative good and the relative evil. He may find himself in the midst of experiences that are not harmonious. By noticing his reactions to the conditions and happenings of daily life, he will be shown his field of overcoming. If he is overwhelmed by difficulties, jarred by discords, disheartened by failures, out of sympathy with others, he will, by asking Spirit, learn what mountains of error must be removed to make straight the way of the Lord. As he studies the principles of truth and grows in understanding, he gains a high standard of living. His ear must be trained to hear the inner voice so that he may note the subtle discriminations of truth. When so trained, whatever is contrary to spirit will strike a false note to his ears. Therefore, he should ever be alert to his ideals. Man is to overcome all that is unlike God, good, in his consciousness, body, and world of affairs, all thoughts, fears, feelings, concepts, beliefs, actions, and appearances that do not measure up to the standard of the Christ perfection and order. Spirit will not only reveal to him what he has to overcome, but will also show him how to overcome through the forgiving love of Jesus Christ, which is able to redeem the errors of his mind and make him Christ-like. Done.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
and Janet, thank you for reading that. And when I was reading that paragraph 12, when these experiences come, a person may feel he is a great sinner and begin to condemn himself. I was thinking of what you were sharing about 8 years of stubborn belief in the brain versus the heart. It almost sounds like that's describing your experience. But condemnation must be overcome because it makes heavier the burden of sin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And based on what Leo was saying, it's like not that there was anything wrong, that this is somehow the way we're guided to learn. And everybody's path is individual, even though the principles are general and the principles apply equally to all of us. The way we navigate them is unique to our own life experience.
Can I add something? Because I met Victor 15 years ago, and we parted ways. And then I stepped in 2 weeks ago when I heard about his misfortune. And he is carrying the load of his aneurysm already since the age of 16. That
Wow.
means almost 50 years.
Wow.
And now he is so trapped in the Thai justice system that he needs to consider other options. And he is now on the path that you are already walking many years. He never read metal. He doesn't know about that. He only now angry the whole medical world. And he's angry already many years about it. And it means he is totally entangled about it. But the amazing thing is, it's a great guy. If you meet him, you will immediately have sympathy for him, because if he cannot please you this way, he will immediately switch to that way. And if that doesn't work, he'll try another one. Overlooking himself, but it's a great guy. But he is there where that path you walked already. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else on paragraphs 12 and 13? If not, we'll move on to 14 and 15. What is meant by work out your own salvation? Oh, this sounds very Emily Cady to me. Who would be willing to read 14 and 15?
I can read.
Okay.
The result of overcoming is salvation, freedom from sin and the effects of sinning, freedom from all consciousness of evil, and the removal of evil thoughts from both the conscious and subconsciousness phases of mind. Every man must work out his own salvation. That is, he must take hold of the saving truth with this conscious phase of mind, and by the power of his thought, build states of consciousness that are enduring, even to the consciousness of eternal life here and now. The whole of salvation is summed up in the consciousness of the Christ mind. The perfection of man as the offspring of God is an eternal truth. However, this truth must be embodied in man's consciousness, into his thinking and feeling processes. It is man's conscious individual entrance into the Christ consciousness that gives him salvation from his own error thoughts, feelings, beliefs, words, actions, and reactions. Jesus brought life and immortality to light, 2 Timothy 1:10. But man gets the benefit of the light only as he consciously incorporates the light of truth into his consciousness through the right direction of his daily thought.
That's right.
Thanks, Ed. Well, there's a lot in those two paragraphs. What do we hear?
Well, it's synced in with our daily word, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was in that valley today. And in Thai they say "Nöy sabai." It means I'm a bit tired, but I feel at peace. I had to take a nap before joining this meeting to be fully present. And thank you all for your help in my own process. Thank you.
Sure. One thing that I noticed here, and I mentioned this earlier, is this is about we're all called upon to work out our own salvation, which is to say, I think there's a Claudia, I think in Emily Cady in Lessons in Truth somewhere, she says something very similar. It's like no one else can do our salvation for us. So
Yeah.
we're already in Christ consciousness, so that we're already in that sense saved, but we each of us have to bring that into our own consciousness. So down here in paragraph 15, it says it's man's consciousness that it is our individual consciousness that brings us entrance into the Christ consciousness. That this is still because there is freedom and choice in the way God has designed its world, that we are all given the right to say yes or no. We can say no to God, and God's like, okay, cool. If you say no to God, then you'll have the life experience of no God. And if you say yes to God, then you'll have the life experience of yes, God.
Can I add to that, Marty?
Please.
If I look at today, then I feel like the wounded healer, because Victor asked my help, but in the end, I was helping myself. And possibly Victor will be helped, but I definitely am helped today. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think one thing that strikes me is that when we're in the presence of other people, this can be very contagious. So if we stay in the light and we keep it in our consciousness, and we come into contact with other people who might not be there at the moment, some of them will actually switch over. They'll almost catch it from us. Not everybody. I've met people that refuse to do that, but a number of people will have been in a horrible mood and everything's going bad, and you talk with them and just let them feel that, and then they make the switch unconsciously. I'll say, even that they don't even know they're doing it. And
right.
you can see that I have a particular relative, and people can't understand why I'm the only person this relative doesn't complain to. I said, because I won't exist in that world with them, and they still haven't figured that out. but it's like I'm not going to go there. And quite honestly, I do go there, but when I'm around that relative, I particularly remember not to do that. I remember to stay in the light and keep my consciousness where it needs to be.
Well, that's really true, Ed. If you don't climb down into that rabbit hole with them, with anyone who's speaking negativity, my experience is a couple of things happen. Either they change or they're no longer in my life, because
Yeah,
I mean, they just
that's true.
evaporate, they go away.
It reminds me of something that the great Swiss psychologist Alice Miller talked about, being an enlightened witness, that we are capable of being enlightened witnesses for each other. Even it's sort of like when I first went to Christ Unity Church, my sense was that everybody in that service was holding me up even when I couldn't stand up on my own in terms of faith. And that's everybody being enlightened for me. And then we in turn are doing the same thing for others.
Yeah,
And without
that is also what I experienced, Martin. Yeah.
yeah. And
Thank you.
without, like
Can I
Ed
add a
said,
little bit? I am used to engage in dialogue. And what I found with the people of Truth Unity is they become silent. And in that silence, they hold me in good thoughts, in good standing. And yeah, that has helped me tremendously. So amazing.
yeah,
And isn't that how prayer works? We hold people in consciousness to lift them up. We don't do the begging prayer or the beseeching prayer. We do the I behold the Christ in you prayer of I know you'll find your path and I'll support you in that endeavor.
And
what do you,
Janet, I was thinking about you and your story because that works also in healthcare with healthcare providers. You might come across nurses and doctors when your visits, and maybe not all of them will respond, but one might. That makes a big difference in your treatment or the approach to therapy. And I've seen it in my life where I I had 16 neurologists tell me one thing, and I went somewhere else, and because those 16 neurologists already knew the answer, they weren't responding to anything. I went somewhere else where people were open and they were listening, and they realized that there's another way, and that other way worked. Now that's and I had to just not be frustrated. I just had to keep at it and keep doing it, and
Well,
maybe you'll have that
it
kind of
absolutely
situation.
happened. You're right, Ed. You're absolutely right. But that it also fed my sureness that what was wrong with me was my brain because she was a vestibular physical therapist. And she said, this is all related to concussions. She said, she was just out of school. And she said, it's become very popular because of all the sports injuries. So
Mhm.
we learned a lot now that they didn't used to teach so much about it. And she endorsed my belief that what was wrong with me was in my head. And she trained me and taught me, and I was very much better. I mean, I was able to start to drive again, and I was better. So she came out of nowhere, and she had no credentials in terms of fancy. My God, I was with some guy at the Columbia Presbyterian in New York who was supposed to be like God, and she listened to what I told her he told me, and she said, it's all wrong. She said, now granted, it was a little while ago, she said, but you were mistreated. You were not treated properly with the way they're treating these kind of injuries now. But the bigger thing for this, I think, the bigger inner thing that's coming to me during this meeting here is that I used this, what I took to be truth. I said, wow, God, I feel really young to like stop being out there and being of service and doing anything. But it's evidently your will because here I am and I'm willing to do something else, except I wasn't willing to have the heart surgery. So I did this past 2 months, I'd say, I kept hearing that voice saying, "You're not done yet. You're not done yet." And what I thought was the end of the road in 17, that all the things I was involved in, way beyond paid work, which was huge, I just thought, wow, this is crazy. I'm done. And at that time, I was, I think, 68. It's somewhere, late 60s. I didn't feel done. And then I think now, yeah, Janet, you think you know everything. You aren't done. There's more for you to do in the circles you travel in, and you're supposed to just get your heart fixed. You're going to feel better, and you're going to be back out there. And I haven't flown. I haven't driven more than, I don't drive on the highway. I have so many things I don't do. And I can sense it's coming back as long as I can stay willing to have this done. And it was like I'm dictating to God from the whole time that this started, saying, well, I guess you wanted me to have a prayer ministry with Zoom, and I guess you wanted this and that. And I don't think God was thinking half the things I was thinking. And we've talked about that at this group too, about, outlining for God. And I was really good at it. And I'm really seeing in the past couple of weeks, not so much. So it helps, like Leo said, you're with people that lift you up and you get lifted up. And because people can say they're praying for you, but if they're praying for the wrong thing happens. And they'll say, oh, that was an answer to my prayers. And I'll think, really? I don't know that I wanted that. I don't just have to be so general in how we lift people up and pray for them because God knows what they need. And it's going to all be revealed and on God's time, not Janet's time.
Cool. Anything else on these two paragraphs? Okay, let's move on to, sorry. Okay, let's dig into the next interesting idea of Charles Fillmore. Who will read number 16?
I will.
All right, thanks, Lillian.
What is meant by race consciousness? For as in Adam all die, so also in Christ shall all be made alive. Corinthians 15:22. That is, as in the limited Adam consciousness, all men die to the consciousness of good. This result in death of the physical body. In Christ, all men shall be made alive to the glorious truth that man is a spiritual being capable of expressing life abundant through his soul, body, and affairs here and now. Adam represents the consciousness of both good and evil. The Adam consciousness is sometimes called the race thought. The race thought is the thought, concept, or belief that is common to the greater part of humanity, whether it be good or ill. Among the error thoughts held by the race are those of sin, poverty, disease, death, and the belief these appearances are inevitable in human experience. Another race thought is the belief that materiality is the real. In the blindness of ignorance, man does not see spirit manifest everywhere. He thinks God to be separate from his creation. He believes that the world and his body are lacking the eternal life and light of spirit.
Wow.
That's a lot.
From your lips to God's ears, Lillian. So, what do we read? What do we hear? What jumps out at us? Yeah, Leo.
I believe this part of the section is much more uplifting if you look at it in a little bit different perspective. If you see that everything that mankind is know, if you could see that as let's say the experience acquired by the mother god, and the mother god has laid down on our frequency, our let's say that layer of consciousness has put a mold there, and each of us is born into the potential to recognize the whole mold. There is nothing there that cannot be captured with our consciousness if we only take the effort. And in that sense, everything is an adventure, both the good and the bad. The good and the bad is only a scale that we adopted ourselves. We agreed with the, let's say, the majority. Okay, I'll adapt that. And I'll say, okay, that is evil. I will not touch that. But if you say that is evil, I do not touch that, you disconnect from the whole. But if you say, like Jesus, get you behind me, then you say, I recognize that this is there, but I'm not giving it power. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
It strikes me that a lot of it goes to awareness, and that, things happen and we have responses to what happens. But if we stop and think about what we're experiencing or what our response is, we can evaluate whether or not we're in, as this talks about, race thought, or whether we've shifted into that higher consciousness, that God consciousness, divine consciousness, that's within us. And I think for me, it's taking a lot of unlearning. And I think from what people have said in the room, we've grown up thinking that somehow we're separate from that God and that we're just in the race thought, and that is. But now what we're becoming aware of, or what Filmer is pointing out, is no, that's the atom consciousness, that's race thought. Don't let that replace the God consciousness that you are in, that you were born with.
For sure. The other thing that's always struck me about this insight into the race consciousness is that it's sometimes difficult to separate our own, quote, individual error consciousness from the race error consciousness. And that it really requires that discernment to appreciate sometimes we feel like we're swimming upstream and we, quote, blame ourselves when it's that we're swimming upstream against the race consciousness itself. So it's one thing for me to work on my own individualized thinking challenges, consciousness challenges. It's another thing to do it in the context of 8 billion people on the planet, all engaging in race consciousness. And if the 8 billion are pushing in direction A and I'm pushing in direction B, yeah, no wonder it's difficult. No wonder it ain't easy.
When you look at the pillars of our society, the medical model, the political model, and the religious model, those are the 3 pillars of race thought consciousness, trenches, if you will. that you got to recognize and overcome.
Yeah.
Does it seem to you like there a lot of what it's evolved into is based on error thoughts? Like the argument that I have with my doctors, for example, is they're always trying to fight a disease, but I don't even have the disease yet. So it's like I don't need to be treated for something I don't have. Or government, all these institutions you just mentioned. It seems like a lot of what they're built around incorporates the error thoughts versus protecting us from them.
They can't protect us from them, Ed, because they can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that they can't protect us from something that they're unaware of. And I think that's what Fillmore is pointing out, is that it's a one-person job, one person at a time job,
And that's the other thing that you reminded me of, Claudia, is it seems to me that I'm most conscious of my error thoughts after I've had them versus before, so that I don't have them in the first place. It's like, that awareness, it's tough to have that pause in there before you do or act, to not go towards the error thought, but go towards the truth instead. But then after you did, it goes, oh, and sometimes you're able to correct it, and sometimes you can't get back to it.
Well, that's how we're wired too, though. Remember, you had to outrun that lion, so, or the lion now just turns into something metaphysical in our lives now, because we don't have very many lions that we're running from. But you have to run, and you have to take off fast before you even are aware that it's not really a lion.
What I've discovered is, if I'm willing to befriend my error thought rather than fight it, then it always becomes a reminder for me to move toward the Christ consciousness. It's just a door. It's a doorway to the truth. And that becomes a spiritual habit we develop. That's why, again, I love Unity, because it's the school of practical Christianity. It's a school of practice. It's not a school of theology, even though we're reading stuff that sounds theological. For me, it always points to the practical. That's the beauty of Emily Cady and the Fillmores and so forth. Emmett Fox, as you were mentioning earlier, Claudia, or Eric Butterworth. They're all about the practical experience of the presence of God, and not the thought about the practical experience of the presence of God. Leo.
And I come back to the metaphor again of the Dutch Santa Claus and the Blackbeats, because for me, the Blackbeats is a group of, let's say, psyches. Each of them have my ear, one way or the other, in whatever way. But because of that, I don't need to address every error at the same time. I can just have a short aspect and make a small step. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we have just a couple of minutes left before it's time to wrap up. Any last minute thoughts, either on paragraph 16 or anything that we've covered today? Okay, Leo's got the seal of approval. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then let's do what we do every week and close with our prayer for protection. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and have a safe and productive Labor Day. And so let's do together the prayer for protection. The light of
The
God
light of God
surrounds us.
surrounds us.
The
The
love
love of God
enfolds us.
enfolds us.
The power of
Power of
God
God
Protects
protects us,
The
The presence of God
watches over us wherever we are. God is, and all is well.
Well,
Thank you, Marty.
Thanks, everybody.
thank you, Marty. And
Thank
nice to
you,
meet
Marty.
everybody today.
See you in September.
All right.
There's a
Right.
song
Your
about
thoughts
that.
correct now.
Already.
Nice to have you, Ed. Thanks for
Yeah,
joining
thanks for
us.
joining us, Ed.
Nice to meet you all. And Marty, I won't be able to be here every week because I'm actually a practicing Quaker. My
Okay.
meeting is so far away, I don't go every week. So I figured in the weeks I don't go, I'll come here.
You're welcome
And you're
anytime.
covered, Ed. You got it all covered. If you go
Well,
Quakers,
it's hard to be a unity traditional Quaker because they don't understand how close they are. But I grew up more with unity than with Quakerism. I became that later in life. So, but
What a
I
blessing.
see a lot of common threads. So
Yeah, what a blessing.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
God bless George Fox.
welcome.
that's right.
All right. See
Great
you
week,
guys.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Labor Day.